Now we'll move into the highlight of our event, which is what we've all been waiting for. Our first speaker is Sachi Kurian. Dynamic, determined, and daring are the words that describe Sachi. A sophomore at Rutgers University, Sachi is pursuing Biomedical Engineering to explore her passion for medicine and technology together. Volunteering as senior residents, participating in blood drives, have fostered her love for medicine, healthcare, and helping others. A true artist at heart, Sachi dedicates much of her time to dance and artwork. As a diploma holder at Biomedical, she uses this title to expand her role in her dance school by mentoring many students to learn and love the ancient art form. Sachi furthered her passion by joining Rutgers University's competitive classical dance team and performs around the nation. Her speech title is A Cycle of Superpower. I love a good superhero story. My personal favorite is Spider-Man, so I'm excited to see what her speech entails. Please welcome Sachi Kurian.
For too long, we have all been living in a man's world. A world created by men, run by men, for men. And in this world, there are specific normalcies, certain structures that have been put into place that cater to a man's skills, his needs, personal requirements, and ideal conditions for success. However, in society today, our world now is no longer run only by men. Women are rising through the ranks. We are gaining traction, gaining power, gaining status. In fact, the female demographic in the workforce has of late reached staggering numbers. There are more women in leadership positions than ever before, taking on high-level management roles. According to the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, 46.8% of the United States workforce is female. That's almost half of the entire workforce made up of women. In the corporate world, there are even standards put into place, demographic requirements that want more women taking on higher level leadership roles. Our power and our gain in traction has even gotten to the extent where there are certain fields in which a woman surpasses a man in number. There's accounting, human resources, primary education, nursing, all in which women are the dominant gender. The bottom line here is that today's world is not only run by a man. The issue with this, however, is that women do not fit into those normalcies put into place by men. We see this very blatantly. It's very obvious and clear. The whole idea of there being a glass ceiling. The fact that women have had to share their experience of shattering a glass ceiling in order to rise through the corporate ladder just goes to show that there are so many difficulties, so many obstacles and barriers in our way just because of our gender. The gender wage gap, the fact that the same job, women are still getting paid less than men, just goes to further show that difficulty. But what I'm talking about today is not about the gender wage gap or about that glass ceiling. What I want to discuss is something a lot more subtle, a lot more innate, something we may have never thought about or even considered. And that is in the field of scheduling and productivity. In my first semester of college, I took a class called expository writing. Now, this class is notoriously difficult. The readings are extremely complex and hard to understand. The assignments we get based off of them are equally as perplexing, and it's overall very difficult to get an A in that class. In this sea of difficult and hard to understand texts we had to read, there was one that stood out, one that actually, unbelievably, really made sense. And that was written by Gia Tolentino. She wrote a novel called Trick Mirror, in which there was an excerpt named Always Be Optimizing. And in this text, Tolentino basically analyzed our society, the structures that we have put into place, which make a woman feel constantly pressured, that make a woman feel constantly forced to be optimized, to be maintaining consistent productivity levels all the time. And this brings certain questions to mind, such as, why is there such a constant need and push for productivity? Why is it so looked down upon when we have an off day, when we're not able to perform at our 110%? And finally, and most importantly, why is it so difficult for a woman to be maintaining that same level of productive output every single day of the month and every single moment of the day? The answer to this lies in the human biological clock and its human biological cycles. Our normal 24-hour schedule is based on something called the circadian rhythm, which is the most fundamental basic human biological clock. This circadian rhythm is one that is 24 hours long, and it follows the sleep-wake cycle. The central and key player here is melatonin, or our sleep hormone. Now, all of these biological clocks and cycles are dictated by hormones. They influence our lives, our emotions, our moods so greatly. Essentially, what melatonin does is it follows the light-dark cycle that occurs in a 24-hour day. This is very simple to understand. During the nighttime, when there's no light outside, when it's dark and the sun has set, is when melatonin is released, which makes us feel tired. We have lack of energy, we feel fatigued. And then in the morning, as the sun rises, we get melatonin is suppressed. And what this causes is an increase in energy levels. This makes us more alert and focused. The circadian rhythm, or this biological clock, is one that both men and women share. It's a commonality we have in our anatomic structure. So then, what's the issue? Why is it so difficult for women to maintain consistent levels of productivity? The difference lies in the gender-specific hormone cycles. It lies in the fact that the male hormone cycle aligns almost perfectly with the circadian rhythm. The central hormone in the male hormone cycle is testosterone, and the fluctuations of testosterone follow a 24-hour cycle, just like the circadian rhythm. In the beginning of the day, there's that first spike in testosterone levels, which make a man very energetic, focused, competitive, aggressive, independent, task-oriented. And then in the middle of the day, testosterone reaches its second peak, which is a little bit shorter, but it makes a man still very task-focused and very independent. And finally, as the day comes to an end, during nighttime, testosterone reaches its lowest peak. And that's where we see the third and final peak in these levels. And this is what makes a man a lot more calm, a lot more tired, energy levels go down. So you can see how the circadian rhythm and male hormone cycle work in perfect conjunction with each other. They work symbiotically. As melatonin increases during nighttime, testosterone decreases, and they produce the same exact effect: tiredness, sleepiness, lack of energy. And the same goes vice versa for the daytime. The female hormone cycle is a little bit more complex. We are not this simple. The female hormone cycle is a type of infradian rhythm, which conveniently by definition is simply a hormone cycle or a biological cycle with a period longer than the circadian rhythm, a period that's longer than 24 hours. The women's menstrual cycle has a period that is 28 days long. So obviously you can see where this alignment is already not occurring. We have a 24-hour cycle versus 28 days. Elisa Vitti is a women's menstrual health expert and a functional nutritionist. And she brings up this idea called cycle syncing, which is basically using the hormonal fluctuations during the women's menstrual cycle, understanding them and catering our diet and exercise regimen in order to maximize our physical health, in order to make us as physically healthy as possible. So now imagine we took that same concept of cycle syncing and understanding those hormone fluctuations and applied it to the fields of scheduling and productivity. How efficient could we become? In order to do this, we must first understand briefly the female hormone cycle. It is broken up into 4 stages, the first of which is known as the follicular phase. During this time, it's characterized by an increase in estrogen levels. Progesterone levels are still at a low, and there's sometimes a tiny spike in testosterone. What this causes, the neurochemical effect that this has on our bodies, is an increase in positive mood, an increase in confidence, and an increase in creativity. With the hormonal changes that are occurring during each phase of the menstrual cycle come certain superpowers, certain enhanced skills and qualities that we get due to the neurochemical balance in our brains. Next, we have the ovulatory phase, which is simply when a woman's estrogen levels peak. During this time, not only do the estrogen levels peak, but so do communication and collaboration skills. So that is exactly our superpower during this phase. Verbal skills, communication, collaboration. We are the most efficient communicators that we can be during this particular phase. Next is our luteal phase, which is also known as the power phase. This is when our progesterone levels start to rise. And now progesterone is an extremely interesting hormone in that it has a calming effect on the brain. What it does is it stimulates our brain's GABA receptors. And this has a calming effect on our brain that soothes us. It has that anti-anxiety effect. And because of this, we become very focused, very task-oriented. We are extremely determined and efficient during this time. So bringing tasks to completion is our superpower during the luteal phase. And finally, last but not least, we have the menstrual phase of the menstrual cycle. Unfortunately, this is more commonly known as her time of month. We cast such a negative view on the menstrual phase. We characterize it as a time of irritability, mood swings, emotional instability, but it's not only that. During this time is when estrogen levels and progesterone levels decrease. Estrogen has an influence on serotonin, or our feel-good, happy hormone. So it's evident and it's completely reasonable why a woman is going to experience some emotional instability during this time. But not only that, we get superpowers here as well. And here our superpower is in thinking. It's in self-evaluation, retrospection, introspection. We are the most efficient thinkers we can be during this time. So all of that probably sounds well and good, cycle syncing, but is it really practical? Is this really going to work, especially in the corporate environment? The simple answer is no. And that's simply because of the fact that the corporate world doesn't care about any hormone cycles. It doesn't care about your progesterone levels or your estrogen levels or your testosterone levels. What it cares about is money. And I think that's a completely appropriate generalization to make when we say that the entire world runs on the monetary cycle. In order to make cycle syncing practical, in order to make it something viable and something that makes sense, we need to understand productivity and the true definition of it. Productivity is not just how efficient we are at work. It is not simply how much we are able to complete in our 9-to-5 careers. And this is due to the simple fact that we are so much more than our professional lives. We are so much more than our 9-to-5. We are so much more than our employers. Yes, we have professional lives, but on top of that, we also have home lives, family lives, social lives, romantic lives. We have friends, families, passions, interests, hobbies that we are all pursuing alongside our careers. Therefore, we must first understand that productivity is optimizing the balance of all of those different positions and titles and aspects of our lives. In doing so, and in applying cycle syncing, the first step that we must achieve, the most fundamental basic thing that we must accomplish, is the removal of stigma surrounding the women's menstrual cycle. It is doing exactly what I'm doing right now, standing up and having an open, honest, accepting discussion about something that is labeled as taboo. It is completely unacceptable and atrociously ridiculous that in a world where women are running companies, running conglomerates, running countries, that there is so much shame and there is so much shunning of what is simply a natural biological process for her. There is no reason that a girl should be ashamed of having her period. There is no reason that a woman should have to hide the fact. And there's no reason that us as a society should throw so much shame on that subject as a whole. We must remove this stigma. We must have this open, honest discussion. But that is only the first step. In order to cycle sync, and in order to use this concept efficiently, we must also understand the application of it. How can we cycle sync? How can we use our superpowers and introduce them into every aspect of our daily lives? To do so, in the follicular phase, which is characterized by that increase in positivity, increase in confidence, creativity, this is literally a perfect neurochemically designed moment to ask our job for that promotion at work or for the raise. In our social lives, this is the perfect time to spearhead projects with all of that creativity. This is the perfect time to be starting new hobbies or pursuing the ones we already have because of that increase in creativity. Moving on to the ovulatory phase, where we have those communication skills and collaboration skills that are at their peak. This is when we can pursue the most networking opportunities. This can be when we make the most plans to hang out with our friends, simply because our superpower in this phase is communication, and therefore socializing a lot is not going to deplete our energy levels, thereby making us productive. In the luteal phase, when we are extremely task-oriented, efficient, and powerful, this can be when we spearhead the project at work that we have due in upcoming months. This can be when we go and attack all of those household projects that we've been meaning to do. Painting a new wall, putting up new wallpaper, building a couple pieces of IKEA furniture, because let's be real, those require a lot more energy and focus than those manuals make it look. And finally, our menstrual phase, which again, I want to reiterate is not only negative, there are positive benefits and superpowers here as well. When we are the most efficient thinkers that we can be, this can be when we brainstorm for the next month, reflect on the past month, and figure out what we need to do next. The lower levels of energy during this time are our body literally telling us to please take a break, please slow down, we need it. Understanding this can let us do things that require a lot less energy without feeling guilt. Binge watching those shows on Netflix, because let's be real, we all have so many to catch up on. And spending time with our family, spending time with our loved ones, doing things that do not require as much energy. It's clear that cycle syncing has so many practical applications. Once we understand the true definition of productivity, it is not a thing that doesn't seem viable at all. It makes a lot of sense. And in a world where women are rising up the ladder, we are rising through the ranks, we are increasing in rank and social status, we need to make sure that we can take advantage of all the things and opportunities that our own body is giving us. Women were meant to be strong. We were meant to be powerful. We were meant to be successful. We were never meant to stick to the confines of society or stick under the shadow of the stereotypes that society has cast upon us. Let us take an understanding of our hormonal fluctuations. Let us remove the stigma surrounding them and understand our powers to do what we all want to do best and ensure that we can always be optimizing.
Phenomenal job, Sachi. These are the types of innovative ideas that break those barriers. Now, we would like to open the floor for questions, starting from the judges.
Yes.
Very, very good speech. That's something what you spoke about was really interesting.
Thank you.
So my question to you is, this is not common knowledge, right? A lot of us have knowledge maybe of one or two aspects of the cycle, but not the entire cycle that you went through. What is your thoughts in terms of what would be the best source of disseminating this information? Is it schooling? Is it at the corporate level? Who has the onus of sort of distributing that knowledge?
The fundamental thing is that we all start in school. We're all learning about our periods, about the menstrual cycle from middle school even. In 6th grade, I believe, is when they taught us family life and went into all these topics. And it was disappointing now, knowing everything that I know, that they only taught us really how to use period products and a little bit about what's really going on in our bodies. We never went into all of these phases. The girls that are entering schooling now are who are going to be entering the corporate world in 10, 15 years. They need to understand this and learn it in 6th grade, in their family life class, so that they can apply it when they reach that corporate world. The fact that we haven't done this yet means that, of course, there are older women who do not know this concept as well. So it's equally as important for us to be disseminating this information in a corporate environment. But I believe that the most powerful source of doing so is going to be a school.
Yeah, I don't know if this is, am I audible? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I want to say I'm speechless, but I got to ask this question. So this is eye-opening for sure. My question is two-part. One is, are there certain professions which lend themselves to adoption of this construct approach? Because I like to think that I'm part of the modern world. I work in firms and companies where these are not this presentation or the ideas that you presented, but the idea of women's leadership or advancing in roles, breaking the glass ceiling are things that are embraced. But I don't think it's informed as scientifically as this. So my question is, how does that happen, and what's sort of the engagement with the corporate world and the leadership to bring this to light and adopt it, and so that they can benefit from this? So it's a two-part question.
Right. So first about the corporate world, and if there's any field that really lends itself to the application of this, the unfortunate answer is that not really, and that's simply because of the lack of education, the lack of information on this topic. There are scientific studies that have been done proving all of those superpowers I've talked about, but we never really discuss those. So that's why, as I said before, in terms of disseminating this information, schools are, yes, the most primary source that we should go to, but applying it to the corporate world, making workshops. We always have workshops or discussions in companies or in corporations. Introducing this as one of those topics is going to ensure that we can get this message of cycle syncing and the superpowers our menstrual cycle provides to everybody, not just girls, but also the women who are already working in circles.
Yeah. So I'm going to have a little fun.
Yes.
Okay. So you did a fantastic job. You did everything good, but I'm just going to give you a different perspective and ask you a question. Is that fair?
No, totally fair.
Okay. So you talked about cycle, diversity, women, everything. The world, everything is on cycle. Everything. Even the earth, moon, sun, financial, I work in financial economy, everything is a cycle.
Right.
And it's all about optimizing.
Right.
So what are you trying to tell us? That, hey, the women's cycle, and if I tap it right, I could break the glass ceiling? Or are you saying they are not actually using it right? What is the message that you're trying to tell here?
Right. So the message is that women have already been breaking glass ceilings. We've heard about it in so many people's experiences. But there is so much more we can do. I think there's a whole field of unexplored possibility that a woman hasn't been able to tap into simply because she hasn't tapped into her cycle. She hasn't paid attention to those hormonal fluctuations. So doing this and understanding our superpower is going to open up a whole world of potential for women.
And you think they have not done it?
I think that there's so much more we can do.
Thank you.
Excellent. A very persuasive argument about the productivity, superpowers. My question is, are there other factors beyond the two hormonal differences that significantly impact on the productivity, cultural, family, and many other factors?
Right. This, of course, because so many factors affect our hormone cycles. There's so many things that affect those testosterone fluctuations, the estrogen and progesterone fluctuations, and stress is one of the big components. The idea here is that if we can use our cycle to optimize, to manage that balance the best we can, then hopefully we would also be able to in turn increase productivity levels and thereby decrease stress levels to some extent. So that won't be as important or have that much of an effect on our cycle. Because of course there's going to be so many external factors. The entire female hormonal graph, that is just a generalization. In fact, even women, every single individual female has such a different cycle. For some of it, it's not even exactly 28 days long. Those external factors definitely come into play, but by understanding what our hormones can do and what stage we're in, despite having a little bit of fluctuation, we can still use those superpowers.
But older women, postmenopausal.
Very good point, because of course there's a very big demographic of women in the workforce who don't have a menstrual cycle anymore. And we can still apply cycle syncing, or we can apply the hormonal effect on productivity in the same way. And it is simply by recognizing that after menopause, those progesterone and estrogen levels start to even out. They start to level out and they're kind of low. They don't go up and down in the way that they did when we were menstruating. So this causes a little bit of a decrease in energy, but the energy levels are consistent. And that in itself is a superpower, because now we don't have to deal with a drop in energy when we're menstruating. We're not going to have that anymore because it's consistent throughout.
First a quick question. When you chose this subject, did you know that there were going to be 4 out of 5 men sitting here in the audience? And
No, I didn't know.
The serious question, now that you have all this knowledge and you've done all this research, what are you going to do with it?
I've already started to implement cycle syncing in my own life. I'm a big believer in practicing what you preach, and I can tell you from personal experience that this actually works. The superpowers are real. They actually do enhance. And I've applied it in many aspects of my life. For example, being a dancer and being on Rutgers competitive dance team, there's a lot of work that goes into that, especially being an executive board member. And there's a lot of responsibility on choreo, which requires a lot of creativity. Every month we have a certain goal to get to, choreographing an 8 count or choreographing 2 minutes of our piece. And I make sure that I am really focusing on getting that done during that follicular phase, during that phase of increased creativity. And it really is much more efficient because of that spike in creativity during this time. So I've already applied it myself. I just really want for everybody to apply it themselves as well, or every woman to apply it.
Does the audience have any questions? Amy, don't be shy, please. I love your questions. Sachi wants more questions.
I'll take more questions.
Yes. Big round of applause for Sachi.